What is up, everybody, and welcome back to 2 Times the Grind, and welcome to a very special episode 53. But if Peach just
hey,
we have our first ever guest. This has been highly anticipated, asked for numerous times, and you're going to be our first guest. Bravo, Andy Dudynsky. It is a pleasure. Not only are you a colleague of mine, but you are one of our bestest friends in the world, and we are thrilled to have you on the podcast. And yeah, bravo, everybody. First of all, it's nice to have you here in person. I think as a guest on the podcast.
I feel like we need a live
we
audience.
do. We need like a clap. But I think Fern will put in some claps for us there because you definitely deserve them. But Bravo, first of all, welcome to the new year. We're pretty early on into the new year, February. How are you feeling about everything that this year is going to bring, especially in terms of Halo?
yeah. First of all, so good to be here. I love you guys. I love coffee, and I love Halo. So this is like kind of a dream of a day for me. Super excited about this year. I think last year ended on a really great kind of crescendo to the year and for the game. And I think we're in a place with this season with a lot of exciting changes, a lot of unknowns. I would say overall, things like map changes are not only positively received, but I think they're really intentional, and a lot of them make sense. A lot of things we don't know how they're going to play. A lot of new shakeups in rosters. So yeah, just I think a lot of hype and the amount of momentum I would want to have coming into a year, I think we have coming into the year.
We have a lot of momentum. I couldn't agree more with it. And just to let you guys know, we're not trying a particularly new coffee today. We've had it on the channel before. It's GNM. It's relatively close to us in New Jersey. Fantastic coffee shop. We love it. Very quaint, very small. Fantastic coffee. I'm having the classic salted caramel latte. Same with Peach. But we actually have Bravo, who's trying right now Black Eye.
This is the Black Eye.
So explain to some maybe coffee kind of middle grounders, goers looking for something maybe new and exciting, what a Black Eye is, because I don't think everyone would know.
I didn't know.
Sure.
You
You didn't know. He's a middle goer.
If you're a psychopath, you can order a Black Eye. Essentially, the genesis of the red eye and the black eye are essentially the order is just to start a black coffee, and if you put one espresso shot in it, it's a red eye, given the name of if you've just gotten off of an overseas flight and 6 a.m. and you need a real coffee, you have a black coffee with a single shot. Some places though just only have a black eye on the menu. GNM is one of them, and you can just get a black coffee with a double shot of espresso. And inside is GNM's their house blend with coconut macadamia with a double shot of espresso. So that's what I'm drinking, and it's let me tell you, it's powering me through this day.
You're ready for the podcast.
Powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff. Well, we absolutely love GNM, so and they know that because we're kind of regulars there. But I also did try the Black Eye for the first time, and I loved it.
Good, right? Yeah.
I think if you are a little bit intimidated by espresso, especially like the taste, it's a little bit too much of a kick for you on your palate. I would definitely say that regardless of the extra caffeine you do get with a kind of house blend drip coffee, it kind of just mellows it out. I think it's like an espresso, something that will wake you up, but also mellowed out in terms of the taste of espresso for me, while also being a psychotic drink. Yeah,
it is. Sure. I mean, I'm coming off of, really what's caused this, I should say, is 2 months in Rome where I was only drinking Italian espresso straight.
Best in the world.
It is really good. With no regular sized coffees around. So if I needed a coffee, it was a shot of espresso. So now I've returned a much more caffeinated man. Yeah.
He knows how to do it, people. This is the true coffee expert. We're just pretenders. We're fakers. We're absolute fake over here. Speaking of Halo, though, and going back to kind of what you said at the beginning, I want to tell everybody a little bit about you. If you don't know who this is, he is an extraordinary talent in Halo.
Attention.
Yeah, you must live under a rock. But Brav has quite a colorful background in Halo, spanning from, do we say decades? Yeah, probably.
It is
right?
decades.
It is decades. Not to make you feel old.
I already feel old, so don't you worry. Yeah.
Trying not to make you feel old. It's more just, I think, in terms of how talented you are at a young age, I think is more the sense of your background.
It's a kind way to say it. It's a very generous way to say it.
But you have really done a lot. You have been in so many different roles, worn so many different hats, going right back to the beginning, before you got into, I think, the role that a lot of new people in Halo would know you as, which is one of the main casters that we see in the industry at the moment, award-winning casters. What kind of spurred your Halo career? What did you start as? What age were you?
Yeah.
And kind of what was the dream back then?
Sure. Yeah, it's we're going way back, as you said. Yeah, let's see. To not spend too much on it, but to still get to the kind of key details. Let's see. I started playing kind of middle of Halo 1 is when I really started to play the game. And like many, my story begins with like Blood Gulch CTF and these rumors. When you're playing like backyard football and your friend groups are telling you, oh yeah, we're doing these big LAN parties, 4 Xboxes, we get the whole neighborhood together. Luckily in Central Jersey at the time, there were these developments where the houses like were on top of each other. Yeah. So finding 8 to 12 to even 16 players, especially when you're talking about like Halo, 2001, 2002 era, wasn't that hard. You could get games going pretty quick. Everyone had, even if you had to lug big tube TVs, like your parents' living room TVs, you could.
You were doing it.
Luckily, yeah, you could. Luckily, I mean, especially I was lucky to have like some very close friends that introduced me to Halo. It was a family of 6 boys, 1 girl. So you had, we were 1 player away from 8-player LAN. Like, yeah, you were 1 player away from 8-player LAN always. Yeah. On top of that, you have these neighborhoods that are so rich. Halo 1's on the rise, Xbox on the rise. So that's kind of where the first allure was. These and then actually playing in Blood Gulch CTFs. Yeah. Where you have upstairs playing against downstairs. Everyone's screaming.
Wait, so upstairs in the house?
Oh, yeah.
Playing against downstairs in the house.
You're running Ethernet cables. You're praying the Ethernet cables don't break or disconnect. You're doing...
parent doesn't trip on them.
Right.
Yeah.
You're essentially, at that time, while there's other things that were being played, it was mostly Blood Gulch CTF. That was what you were playing.
Could you hear each other through the walls?
Oh, everyone's screaming. The best thing is because of Blood Gulch CTF, it's not the highest scoring game type. Yeah. Right. So when someone had to go to the bathroom, these games would go 2.5 hours.
Oh my God.
And when someone had to go to the bathroom, they would sit with a shoddy on the flag and go to, just so that was like a little bit, one second extra distraction, so someone would second guess it. They would go to the bathroom, they'd come back, and nothing would have changed, right? Keep in mind, like all these bases are, I became such a nerd to like jam every vehicle in the base perfectly because you can essentially make the base inescapable with 1 player. You have to have tossed out the top in Halo 1 where you can get threed from the caves and the cliffs. Like it's just the way the most games ended was the Ethernet cable would fail or one of the Xboxes would fail and the game might end 1-1. But man, the volume when a hog is running a flag back in Halo 1, like the hype, I don't know if anything can match that. So that's kind of my...
Someone snipes him out of it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's like...
I love that. How serious were you taking that back then? Like, for example, like video games, I feel like bring out an inner kind of aggression in me that I didn't know was there until I'm in game. Yeah. Did you fall out of friendships through...
especially in Siege 1 2. When you get to H2, H3...
It just gets dicey.
When like competitive and events and ranked, when all that comes on the scene, friendships were in jeopardy.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
Challenged.
But yeah, that's kind of how I fell in love with multiplayer in Halo. And a lot of that friend group, of course, was growing up on GoldenEye and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that was where I got really deep into the franchise. And then of course we eventually get to H2 and I think didn't really learn about proper competitive until just after H2 launched. And then that's when I was finding out about halo-pro.com, which was pre-YouTube. So that's where you're seeing things like Strange Purple videos, Ogre videos. You're watching AGP, Halo 1 tournaments, SAN, POV, things like that, where you're starting to get a few names like that are becoming recognizable. And probably like the most tangible proof point that I remember, and PJ, I'd love to hear your kind of like memories that still stick in your head. But I remember seeing like, when you're seeing the leaderboards and it's Ogre 1, Ogre 2, Overshield, like it's like leading these Bungie.net leaderboards. That was the point where it was like, oh, they are the best in the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Are there things that you remember from early Halo 2 that are...
I was so young, but it was like, the leaderboard. I honestly wish to this day that we had leaderboard, even if it was like that, because it was like, I remember I was glued. I'd win a game and go, and immediately you're checking your progress. Okay, how close am I? How am I about to ring up? Oh, I need one more game. Okay, I got to win this next game. I'd say I didn't look at the global probably as much because I was so young. I think I was so focused on my rank and me ranking up. Yeah. But I do remember like looking and seeing like some of the ranks that people were getting. Later on in Halo, I started getting close to those ranks. Like in Halo 2, cheaters made it kind of impossible. But yeah, like seeing like some of the ranks that people are getting, you're like, I think Nate and Legit, I know, were like one of the first 50s in like doubles or something like that. And you're sitting there going like, how the hell do you get a 50 in doubles?
19,
yeah, you know, I'm like, Jesus. And it's like, and not only that too, with the modders and standbyers, you're like, I can't win a game at this round. I'm level 35 and I can't win, you know, but they're just that good at that point, you know? So yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
For context, how old would you have been in that time? How old would you have been during this period of time?
Yeah, when Halo 2 comes out, I was 14.
14.
What year was Halo 2?
2004.
9?
9.
Right? Because 2007 was my first event, or 2006 was my first event. I was 11. So yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I think it's interesting too, because the way that MLG kind of gains momentum and steam and even becomes in something that I'm aware of was all Xbox Live. And, you know, you're pre-social media, you are pre-YouTube still. Yeah. So it's kind of was like, if something was going to spread like wildfire at that time, it was either IRC or something, you know, something in PC gaming or Xbox Live was kind of going to be the way that it like caught pop culture. 100%. So then I kind of slowly learned about, like I said, competitive players, and a lot of my friend group kind of became really into the best players of the time, ranging from, you know, every team you can imagine, all the way STK 3D to even, you know, your players that are more top 8, top 12, Sad Panda, you know, all these different teams that are kind of performing at these events. And luckily there were so many events back then. If you think of the 05 season, something like 8 or 9 lands.
05 would have been, I think there was 13.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Even more. So there was a lot to start to pay attention to. Slowly started playing competitive settings, realized I was pretty good. You know, I think what was cool about that era was, especially being in, whether you're in middle school or high school or college, if you were any of those ranges really, it was like this such a social, tangible, you know, it was always a question of like, if this person, first of all, it was likely they were playing Halo 2 on Xbox Live. And then it was like, what rank are they? And it was this like social clout thing where, I mean, it's like unmatched. I mean, maybe there's a little bit of modern stuff like that in Fortnite and League where like, you know, high school and aged kids get to kind of have that social competitive dynamic, maybe, but nothing's going to beat
almost like an identity almost at that age, and considering how many people were playing that totally. You knew. Yeah. And it was really cool to see just all that happen and to be part of it. Like, so lucky. And then just to kind of wrap that up, my first event I went to was Finals 05. And from there almost didn't, and then started attending events, every event in 06. And then essentially, once the 2007 season starts, I didn't miss an event until the end of MLG's run. Holy smokes.
So it was actually since the end of 06, playoffs 06 and on. Went to every single event until MLG drops. Until end of reach. And I started coaching. That was when I started coaching as well, because I really wanted to focus on getting into good school. It was my junior year of high school in 07. So I reached out to a bunch of people to see if I could start coaching, and then started coaching full time at the 07 opener. Yeah.
Did you, because, you know, obviously I followed pretty much everything back then, but I wouldn't say I knew every single team fully. Sure. Like, you know, coaches obviously included. Course, I knew some, like Carbon back in the day had.
Are you trying to say you didn't know who he was?
No, I knew who Brab was. What I was going to ask, what I was going to ask him.
I don't know who you are.
I knew who he was by the time you got on FB in 08. Yeah. I knew who you were. Sure. But then, like, what was the build before that? Yeah, before that. Yeah, because like, you know, at that point, I don't know what is really going on with a lot of teams. So that's why. Sure. It seemed like you had a great relationship with them and everyone knew who you were. And I was like, oh, like I knew. Then obviously from then on, you're on a top team every single year. Sure. So yeah. It was really cool. It was a lot of grinding in M bracket before I got even to pro bracket. Essentially, the way I started coaching. At the time, there were almost no coaches. It was like Triple X coaching Carbon at playoffs and finals 06. FB never had one.
Didn't have a coach.
They randomly would have their brother.
Marty, Marty wasn't even really coaching yet. It was like truly just Triple X coaching Carbon, and then a few like friends that people knew of in the community coaching anyone.
Basically to like give a pass.
Yeah, like, you know, literally to get a team pass.
Yeah, he's my coach. He's my coach. Yeah, to let people.
That's what it was.
To let your friend in. Like, you know, it's like, we're going to the pro.
So it really has evolved significantly.
It was like, so we're also, of course, it's worth noting just for people to get like the visual, we're pre-headsets.
Okay.
Not only are coaches not wearing headsets, players are not wearing headsets. They're only wearing headphones at this stage. So this is the end.
Some not even. Carbon.
Exactly.
Just literally.
Tons of teams not wearing headphones at all.
Neither.
You just have volume coming out. Sometimes you have. Okay,
out of
imagine playing.
monitors?
Imagine
No.
there's a what's that?
Out of the monitors?
Out of TVs. Out of big ass tube TVs.
They weren't monitors,
No.
baby. They were TVs.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Big ass
Sorry, the
gray tube
chunkers.
TVs.
I will
Yeah.
say, I did love
Chunky
those
TVs.
TVs were awesome. How good were they? They were good.
Really good TVs. Yeah.
So you'd be happy if you turn up to an event and you just got this chunky tube TV and you're like,
If it's H2?
Nowadays, maybe nowadays, probably not as much. But like, when I played Halo 2 back in the day, what was it? It's like a tube TV. It's literally what it's called, isn't it? Yeah, like no, like my
with the screen slightly round.
my cousin had one.
They were flat screen tubes.
Yeah,
They were
my
clean.
cousin
Flat
had one,
screen
and I
tubes.
like. Anytime we were playing, it's like I want to be on that TV, like 100%. Had the headphone jack in.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
I'm just shook that genuine sound coming out of the TVs. Like it just, I can't imagine the chaos.
Yeah, well, it's good you bring it up. It's like a perfect transition because especially when you have, keep in mind, a lot of teams, even your semi-pro teams are starting in split screen. Yeah. So you have about 1,000 at any given time people in a giant ballroom with that many TVs, split screen volume coming out of TVs, and yelling on top of it. So that's actually the genesis of coaches. Was not kidding. Was cutting through the fucking chaos because the person on the left not only could not see the player on the right's TV, but they couldn't hear anything. So I kid you not, as I'll get into teams too, but a lot of my early, I would say skill set, not kidding, was like, back then, people remember visuals, but you were dodging in between the two players on the left and the two players on the right to communicate the actual call out. Or, for example, the guy on the right, maybe you could tell based on the POV or the comms, doesn't know Overshield's coming up, and you had to scream through the chaos. So I just happened to be like a hockey, lacrosse, soccer goalkeeper my whole life. So I was used to just like yelling and kind of leading from the back.
Sure.
So that was all just luck that I just knew how to yell really loud.
You already had those skills.
And and I could just yell over. And luckily, with my Halo knowledge, you kind of it was an interesting time in coaching. Also, like if you add on the top that Battle Creek had all those power weapons and all those powers, just crazy stuff. Like you kind of had to be able to track a lot of things, and a lot of stuff fell off. Like the stuff that coaches comm now is a luxury, right? You're like timing thrusts and stuff. Yeah. Back in the day, you were just like, is everyone on the same page? Like, does everyone, like, you had to make sure that everyone realized, guess what? It's Overshield every 60 seconds. And I know we just got Ovi, but in 14 seconds, there's a send up again. I know we still have Ovi full, but there's another one coming in 14 seconds. So that's kind of the genesis of what coaching was back then. Not that many people taking it seriously. So I reached out to a bunch of people. Believe it or not, it would have been on MySpace, given the timing.
wow.
Oh my God, I love
MLG
it.
forum messages and MySpace would have been where the messages were
Could I
sent.
ask you a quick question, just like before
Please,
we move on through your coaching journey? What was it about kind of your experience at that time that made you want to kind of dive into coaching? Because it's interesting now to see the transition from player to coach to then caster, considering actually the next two parts of your journey are very analytical heavy and it's something that you thrive on and you're so damn good at. So did you recognize that back then when you were like, actually I would like to be a coach? Did you think to yourself, actually, I know the game. I feel like I have a really big understanding of this game and like kind of what we need to do to get wins and get dubs across the board. Is that kind of a realization you had back then? I
don't think it was a realization from like a confidence perspective. Right. I didn't like look at coaching and be like, I'm going to be really good at that. Yeah. It was more like, it was just appealing. Yeah. And I hoped that maybe I could be good at it. And I was really into it. So I think that's kind of where it started. Yeah. I would do really nerdy stuff though, because on halo-pro.com, just to give everyone an idea of what that was, it was a collection of montages, full gameplays, some tournament footage, and even articles. And for example, Strange Purple had an article about how to play free for all and how you should be in free for all. You have to play different than fours, because in FFA you have to always be looking for headshots, whereas in fours you always want a 1-2 body third shot head, just little stuff like that. But there was even stuff about like setups on chill out and all this stuff. So that kind of introduced me to the idea that you could have this like article format and analysis of Halo. But I remember, the reason I bring that up is I remember sitting in math class, 6th grade, maybe, and writing counter strategies to 2v2 lockout. If someone has window, if someone had window and top ER, what the snipe push should have been from elbow, the timing of the nades, the angle of the nades, like exactly how a timing push has to be if you jump S1 top mid. Like, so I was already kind of thinking that way. And I was lucky to already have influences that kind of stuff is things you could do. And no one's making videos about this at the time yet. It was like literally written.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I was like getting into the nerdiness of it all.
That's exactly what I wanted to kind of hear and know about, because I think that there is, you're just different. I think there are certain people who would do that, just naturally take their time to do something like that. And there are people who wouldn't. Yeah. And I think to be super analytical on something and be an educator, which you kind of are now, it's something I think can be obviously trained, but I sometimes do believe in a natural kind of energy towards going towards something like that and to be successful at it. And that's definitely quite clearly where that stemmed from. So that's so fascinating. Yeah,
it was fun. So to give you an idea of, so I reached out to everyone on like MySpace and MLG forums, and I got some like a few responses where people were like, oh yeah, I'll let you know. Some really like kind responses from people like Vogue and Foxy, two early females in the scene who were really supportive and like would help me find a team. But the player that messaged me back was Silverson, mainly known for his Halo 2 free-for-all play, top 8 free-for-all player, plays really well, sometimes even top 3. And he was like, sure, you can coach us. The team name was Wu-Tang Financial, 4th seed in AM, Fire, Sure Shot, Bullets, Silverson. I remember I show up at this first event I flew to, Charlotte 07. Yeah. I show up, hang out with the guys. We become like instant friends. And we actually take legends. It was like IGOI, Defy,
probably maybe best man.
Yeah,
at that point.
A roster like that. We blow a enormous lead in a lockout ball. They were the 4th seed in pro bracket. Yeah. So we were like inches from taking the 4th seed in pro bracket. And we ended up still placing kind of fairly well that event. But I remember I'm meeting guys like Ramby and kind of like slowly just kind of meeting really cool people in the scene. Breaking into the scene. I remember because, I mean, to this day, free-for-alls are managed so poorly schedule-wise. But I remember Silverson came back to the room at Saturday morning at 3:30 in the morning. And he like puts his backpack down. And he goes, I got 3rd. And he goes to sleep and we wake up the next day and we play. But I just absolutely loved like the environment, the intensity. I had already been to a lot of MLGs already, luckily. So I kind of knew what to expect, what it was like to play in an open pit. So who knows how well I did coaching, but we placed fairly well. But I remember I got this crazy, I was lucky to, I think, place just outside of pro bracket with that team because it gave me this crazy hunger. I was like, holy shit, we were inches away from having one of the biggest at the time. It would have been one of the biggest overnight successes, you know, to take the 4th seed in pro bracket. So that got me really hungry for it. And from there, coached a bunch of different rosters, and the iterations kind of went through Halo 2 into then from there kind of Time to Prove. So Donut, Big Timer, as well as kind of Ray, and different rosters like that, Timeliest Brute, into eventually a few different rosters of those iterations. But I ended with FBI Icon in, let's see, that would have been Finals 07. And we took Carbon to Game 5, which was an amazing series, but we placed top 6 at Nationals 06. So Nationals 07. So beginning of the year starting as a NAM coach, and I actually have never even thought of it, but ending the year top 6 taking Carbon in Game 5.
Invite only tournament, it was only
exactly.
Top 8.
That's like a huge success story.
Yeah, it was.
Or there was a plan. But.
Yeah, it was. So a really great first year. Now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever really done the A to Z thoughts on that year, but I'd say even bigger than that was I just wanted to be at every event. I felt so lucky to be at all of them, meeting friends that I have for life, and kind of the just the feeling around those events. And I just wanted, there's nowhere else I wanted to be. And I just knew from even earlier than that, but certainly from then on, that I wasn't going to miss an event. And anything, whether it was school, work, family, et cetera, things were going to revolve around this event schedule. So that would then bring us into Halo 3. But I don't want to drone on and on, so I'll pause the story there.
Talking about missing, did you miss playing at all during your coaching kind of, kind of success?
No, because I was never as good as PJ. But on the real, I mean, I was a fine Halo player. And like when I went to my early MLGs, placing okay in open, getting whatever, who knows, getting whatever it was, round 5 or round 6, whatever. Who knows if it was top 48 or whatever it was. But like, essentially, probably not even top 48, so not even placing that high. So I didn't miss playing because I think I had already started to realize I was probably better at coaching.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And I could add much more value
Right.
to a top team without a doubt as a coach than I could as a player. Yeah.
Probably more like at that point too, like obviously you love attending events, you're loving being around your friends, and you love the game on top of it. And I imagine, you know, maybe you're not placing the best when you're playing, but when you're coaching and you're going toe to toe with these best teams in the game, and like I feel like that has to be for someone who loves the game as much as you do, and as intense as you were into it, like that had to be a really good feeling. You know, to be like you're playing against Carbon in game 5, and it's like, you know.
Exactly. And when only years prior, right? I was like, I was just like, you know, looking up to STK 3D as, you know, as the gods that they were. So yeah, to then be in sitting across from them in a series was, it was wild.
Yeah,
was
and
wild.
being taken very seriously as well. I have 2 more questions for you about yourself before I let you off the hook of continually talking about yourself, because I know it's a difficult thing to do sometimes when you're like having to talk about yourself and relive a lot of things. One, the iconic Bravo hairstyle and glasses. When did that happen, and did you know it was going to be iconic?
Oh God, I still don't know if it's iconic. Let me tell
It is iconic. It
definitely happened.
It's iconic.
It definitely happened, but let's see. That would have been
2008?
Later, because I was coaching FB in 08.
Did you have long hair? I thought you had long hair.
During Final Boss days?
Yeah.
No, short hair.
It was short hair. Then
and
TD, you had long hair.
Yeah,
That
it
must
was
have
eventually,
been
not early TD though. It
Later
would have
on.
been like 2010 TD.
Wow.
All of 09.
Really?
All of 09
You know
hair
what?
was short.
I could see it. I could see the
Yeah.
TD tracksuit now. That's what it is. It's 2010.
Yeah, it's 20. Yeah, it is. Yeah, but wait, you said you had another question before.
No, I have a question after that. I've
Oh.
got 2 for you. One was, did you know it's going to be iconic?
No, I like I said, it's.
You had no idea.
There's a lot of generosity in that term as well to call it iconic.
It is
It
so
definitely
iconic.
happened, and there is photo evidence for better or worse. But
It is very iconic. It's also recreated often in the HCS.
true.
People love
Yeah.
we love to see it. Last question: transition from coaching to casting. I know that there's kind of bits in between that I think that probably kind of went into that role for you, whether that was working directly for 343, etc.
Sure.
How did you become a caster? What was that process like? Was it an overnight like, oh, I kind of want to do this, or was there a gradual kind of ease into it?
It was gradual. Yeah, I could probably kind of tell. Probably the best place to start with would be coaching, like FBTD, and going from there. So the way that it all happened is quite lucky. So as a result of coaching all these kind of different H2, H3 rosters, early on I was actually playing in H3 for a little bit, just because the game battles opens that like seeded it were 100%. So, and like luckily I had enough friendships at that point where we were placing pretty well, certainly top 32, maybe higher, with like the early rosters, which was a great way to like learn H3. But early on in H3, I'm coaching rosters like Ambush, so kind of Heinz, Cloud, Eli, Gunshotty rosters, different permutations of that. Also believe the hype rosters. And then, got a crate. I was supposed to coach, I believe it would have been Ambush or one of the kind of variations of a gunshot roster for Toronto 08. And my landline phone rings at my parents' house.
The landline
Rings, and it was strong side. And mind you, Side and I at that time, I'd hung around Side, and we were friendly, and I think we both knew that we were both just kind of like goofy kids that love to have fun.
still are.
And yes, it's true. And but I have strong side calling me on my parents' landline because I'm about 17 at this point. And he asked for me, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And he's like, just wanted to know if you're coaching anyone for Toronto 2008. And I was like, as of right now I am, but that can change really quickly depending on how this phone call goes.
Yeah.
And so he's like, okay, well, we want to pick up. This is also, just to give people timing, this is also when Walsh had just been dropped, and when Neighbor had been picked up.
What a time.
Yeah. So he's like, so this is kind of, early on, middle of the first year of H3. And I'm like, I would, if you're asking me to coach Final Boss, I would love to coach Final Boss. And he's like, okay, we're landing at the Ogre's house for the next week, and then we're driving together to Toronto. Would you want to come? And I'm just like, yes, I will be there. Send me an address. Let's do it. And then I get off the phone, and I don't know what to think. And then I want to say my cell phone rings after that, and it's Ogre 2. And he's like, hey, would you want to coach us? And I'm like, I don't know if you've talked to Mike yet, but I think I am coaching you guys. He's like, oh, okay, cool. We'll see you like in a few days. So in a matter of, I had to pack not only for the Ogreland and then Toronto, and I was going to be late. I had to pack for my first semester of college, all in one day and in one carload. Wow. So as you can imagine, the semester of college was the lowest priority on that tier list. So I just slam everything into a car and zoom across Jersey to Pickerington, Ohio, but just over 8 hours. I was such an idiot. I went like 95 the whole way, left lane. Remember, my car didn't have, the air conditioning was not great in the car, so I'm just sweating profusely. It's the summer. It's like August. And I get there, and all of a sudden I'm in the Ogre basement. Yeah. The checks on the wall, just like the fucking photos you've seen. It was like crazy. Crazy. And then I later learned, though, at that land, I'm like, by the way, like how, what led to the phone call? They go, oh, we're landing Chilled Reality this week. And Silent said you were a great coach. So he said that we should pick you up. And I was like, man, like it's crazy. You know what I mean? Like
word of mouth.
The things that lead to one another. So yeah, we placed kind of, I think third, fourth that year was how we ended Toronto, Dallas, Vegas. So like for FB standards, acceptable, not at the bar, not at the bar we should have been. And then, I was lucky to kind of get the offer for, after T wins the first event, and then I got an offer to coach them for the rest of the year. Oh, is that for the first event? Yeah.
Got you.
So that kind of brings me to Triggers Down, and I won't spend too much time on that. But the reason I bring all that up is at that time I had coached, especially once you get year one of TD done, I was feeling pretty good about kind of my knowledge of the game and things like that. And it was like, then Puckett started to ask me to come into the booth, is how we get. The reason I bring up all that backstory is Puckett, when I would have a series off, he's like, hey, do you want to cast this series? And I'd be like, yeah, that sounds awesome. And it was cool because at that time, and PJ, y'all appreciate this so much, at that time I had been drilled, especially in H2 and H3, drilled into my head is how to play this game at a high level. And I've only listened to top level comms for like years now of do's and don'ts. Don't stand on open ramp when a teammate is spawning. Like all these little nuanced things. So when I got to the booth with Puckett, I'd be like, well, they don't want to be doing that. And I realized like, holy crap, this stuff is pretty deep, nuanced level information. And I've been lucky just to be surrounded by it. Like I only, you only
want. What you knew.
Yeah, that's it. So it was really natural for me to be able to sit in a booth in the same way that Chris would be great at it today. You know what I mean? And any of you guys could just sit in a booth or on an analyst desk and say, this is a good decision, this is a bad decision, this is why this is risky, this is, here's what they're thinking about, here's why this didn't work. Yeah, so Puckett kind of asked me to come in and out of the booth. And I did that on and off whenever I had breaks for several years. And then 2012-ish is like the first time I casted on a paid gig with MLG during Reach. And it was like Golden Boy and I, casting like Reach 4s.
Yeah, the No Blue, No Sprint event?
Yeah. So that kind of brings us, that's kind of the backstory on how I got into casting and then from just like casual casting with Puckett and Gandhi into actually in the booth on a paid thing. Yeah.
It had always been color for you, naturally?
Great question. It's, let's see, 12 years ago, we probably had no idea.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Right. I feel like just based on what you're saying, it sounds like naturally, just because of the background that you have and had, naturally you were color casting because of your analysis-based role that you'd had with coaches and still were coaching at the time. I think that maybe it was naturally kind of like, oh, that's kind of what I do.
Luckily, I think with Puckett probably had the wherewithal and the awareness to keep me in that role when I was doing these guest casts here and there. When it came to Golden Boy and I in 2012, Lord knows, just to put it in perspective, Mark and I recently watched like one of our first casts together.
Oh, God,
we were in tears. It's like, we have no idea what we're saying, what's going on. So I can only imagine what 5 years prior to that sounded like. So the short answer would be I eventually got to realizing the color role and working on it, but probably in the early years it was a lot of just yelling. And we're saying the right things probably, and we were probably describing the gameplay correctly.
Organized yelling.
I don't know how elegant it would have been. Yeah.
I'm an organized yeller.
Just to pause any story going further, that is the most strong side story I've ever heard. Like, you know what I mean?
Dude,
like if you're like, dude, you never believe who called me back in 07 on my landline. Like that would be the answer, isn't it? That's so funny.
Yeah.
It's amazing what, with age, my appreciation for Michael Strongside Kavanaugh only grows year by year. I was lucky to see Mike last year at Walsh's wedding for the first time in a little while. But when you think, I mean, there needs to be one day it needs to be done, but like the stories need to be told from those old events. Yeah. But mostly it needs to be the strong side stories because man, did that dude bring like life to the scene in a way that cannot be matched. Yeah. God, yeah, incredible. Like, especially, I mean, strong side in Vegas on a weekend where he's won the free for all and the 4v4. I mean, you can only imagine what the chaos that ensued.
He's a special person. He really is. I miss Side very much.
Yeah, I mean, I owe a lot to Mike. I owe a lot to Silent for referring me to Final Boss, and then even before that, you know what I mean? It's kind of like this crazy trickle down domino effect of like people that I owe gratitude to all the way back to. Luckily, my best friend still today, Matt, who introduced me to Halo. You know, it's good. There's a straight. If you follow the trail, there's a ton of people that I'm so grateful to, who just became great friends or who I happened to team with, that all led to. That all ultimately led to the Final Boss TD days and then even beyond. Yeah.
You know, it's funny just hearing you say that, and maybe you'd feel the same way as well about you looking back at your history. And it's the same for me with my career. Is often when I get asked the question, how did you get into this? Like, how do I get to where you are, or how do I start? And I'm always like, well, honestly, I had a lucky start, and like it was by chance. And I always struggle to answer that question because there is no actual like just direct path that I can give you to be like, this is exactly how I did it. Steps 1, 2, 3, 4, follow through to 20 and you'll get there. It's so difficult. Do you ever get asked that question? How do I become a caster? How do I do this? How do I get to where you are? Because it's something that I really struggle answering and trying to help people, because I want to help people, but it's almost just like pursue your passion, do what feels right in that moment, work really hard at it, practice, speak to people, network, do what you've got to do. But there really is no direct path. And it's just interesting hearing you say stuff like, you know, this call or this friend said this and whatever, because it really is like that. It is. Yeah. I think the best, where I always kind of end up falling back on is just encouraging people to like really find ways to add value, specifically in places where it's not yet being added. Especially like people are like, how do I get a job in the games industry, for example? Sure. And how do I get noticed? I think like I always tell people like, be so good at what you're doing that the developers can't ignore you. You know, create a stats site, for example, that is so above what anyone else is doing that you're immediately on the radar. So I think that there's just like it's kind of this combination of finding what you love and then doing it and finding ways to add unique value, which is broad and vague. But I think if you stick to those principles, you'll find kind of success in this 100%. Space. And it should feel so natural. I think when it feels the best is when you just aren't even thinking about those things. You know what I mean? Like, for example, there's a large gap in between all that where I'm also just started doing YouTube content, you know what I mean? And just like doing analysis and breakdowns. And there was never a question of, should I start to do Halo gameplay breakdowns? You just did it. You know what I mean? In the same way that I'm sure you just kept competing, right? It should feel, I think when you're lucky, you have not only the interest, but also the drive to just be the best at whatever the thing is that you want to do. I think for me, a little tiny part of that as well is enjoy your journey to it. Oh, it's all the journey. I think when you almost like wake up one morning and you just go, I'm going to be this and I want to be this right now. I feel like you're already actually putting yourself at a disadvantage. I think you've got to enjoy the journey of trying to be this thing or do what you want to do and what you're passionate about, because that journey is so shaping of a person. You hear it just with you speaking this first part of the podcast is like, you have had such an incredible journey to who you are today. And did you enjoy it? I mean, it sounds like you did. It sounds like you had an the whole thing was time. The journey. Yeah. Like right? That's the whole thing. Yeah. And to put it into perspective, right? Even when we're placing top 3 and winning events, I was making no money, right? Yeah. I didn't care at all about prize winnings, anything. It was all the journey. And that was the best part is I couldn't imagine not being at an event. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it showed because I just didn't miss one. Yeah. But it was all about, I was lucky that, it was always about kind of the people you were around, the places, the events specifically that you were at. I think that's a really good point though, a lot, because
like, right, you wouldn't be where you are unless you loved the work you do.
Yeah.
PJ, you wouldn't be a world champ unless you, right, day in, day out, knew what it took and loved the work. So, I think that's I think that's the whole thing is the journey.
You got to enjoy the hard work and the process of it. And
exactly.
It's a really fascinating thing. Do you know what? That was amazing for me because I've actually never sat down and asked you to like give me like an A to Z on like how you have become you, which is fascinating to me. So I love.
I appreciate the opportunity because to be honest, I've never had the chance. Like as you saw, I was figuring shit out as I went. I was like,
oh yeah, first, everyone.
That way.
Here we go. First time we've had Rob tell everybody.
Tell the story.
Tell the story. Yeah. You've heard it here first. All right, people, let everybody know and your friends know to watch this episode. But let's talk a little bit about current affairs and what's been happening in Halo, because obviously, if you guys are new to the podcast, you don't know, I'm Latte, I'm the host of HCS. Rob is one of our top casters, if not in the whole of esports, but for the HCS as well. And then Snakebite here is also an incredible player and happens to be a 3-time world champion and current world champion of the HCS from last season. We're into our brand new season. It is kicking off technically LAN-wise in March, but we have already had our first 2 qualifiers going into that LAN to get points and a little bit of cash money as well. So things have been happening. I'm very excited about the LAN that's coming around the corner. And speaking of, we have a lot of changes, a lot of meta shifts, roster changes, name changes. It's a lot of change. It's a lot of change and it's hard to keep up with, and which we will try to do our best to get a lot of information across the board to you guys and discuss basically all of it. I think the first thing I want to discuss is Bandit starts. I think that is a huge meta shift. Obviously, removing your starting weapon, changing it to a completely different feel of a gun, the shot, the register. It is very different. How has it been for you so far, Paige, getting used to something as significant as that? First of all, do you like it? How does it feel? Does it play well?
Yeah, I've been really enjoying it. I think everyone knew like a single shotgun, I think it was always going to be pretty good fun. But,
back to your roots almost.
Yeah. Kind of. I mean, it started with the CE pistol, so technically it is a single shot, isn't it? But yeah, it's just been, I think the part that I enjoy the most about it is just relearning things, because like, we're going on year 3 of a game, and if you have the same weapon the whole entire way through, I think it can just get a bit stale for players. But now it's like you almost have this whole new, it's a whole new meta shift. It's a whole new starting weapon. So, been enjoying it. I think it plays great. Obviously, some players want some tweaks here and there, which maybe might happen down the road. But overall, I think everyone's really been enjoying it. So it's been fun.
I think there's been like a little bit of concern. I've been really enjoying it. I've been enjoying using it. I think there's been a little bit of concern of kind of getting team shot and the capability of like playing your life and the difficulty of that when getting team shot by the Bandit, because you just get absolutely melted. A 1v2 situation or just a number situation in the wrong balance usually means dead. And obviously with that, control is just totally evaporated out of your team's hands. Brav, how do you think that balance is going to kind of play into some of our teams and how they're going to handle it, and the kind of setup changes potentially and the teamwork that might have to come forward in order to kind of take that imbalance, so to speak, of the weapon and push it into their favor, or just make it more kind of considerate of how they want to play? Yeah,
I'm really curious to see how it really plays on LAN and through these next few weeks of online. To be honest, I think that it's an interesting double-edged sword, right? Because in a 1v1, you can absolutely melt someone and turn on them. And then I'm really curious to hear your thoughts, Paige. And then when you look at the team shot scenario, I mean, the speed at which someone, just to use an example, if there's 2 players at green watching bridge to nest and someone pokes nest, they're gone. Yeah. So I'm curious what your thoughts on the time to kill on a team shot right now. If it's, I mean, it's kind of in a way even more punishing, right? I think there's a level of competitiveness to it where you can't get away with the peaks you used to be able to get away with. So I'm curious on your thoughts on how that's playing, if it's good, and your expectations there. Yeah,
like it is obviously the Bandit it has a slightly faster time to kill, so that's kind of like the reason for why it seems so severe. It definitely is different. Like you get melted a lot faster because of the time to kill. I'm a bit different the way I look at stuff. Like even though we've been playing online and kind of getting used to the changes right now, I'm just like, you know, I get asked question loads, obviously, and like I'm just kind of like, I'm gonna like see what the first event feels like and plays like and looks like, because with online play, there's just so much stuff that it's like I just don't, you know, I don't necessarily know if that makes sense. Like,
totally.
It feels like you can't turn a corner, but then like, you know, with online play, like you die around a corner. So it's like, well, maybe you could get around the corner, but but that's a thing that you don't know. But yeah, there is a bit more of a caution. I think you have to use jiggle peaks a lot more. Yep. You can't like quickly turn corners so fast. I think it's, you know, again, obviously it's different, but I would have said the same thing with a battle rifle, where like if you take a wide peek and two people are looking at you, you're probably dead, you know,
sure.
It definitely feels more severe because of the quicker time to kill. But yeah, it'll be interesting, especially with, I think from Infinite to now, you can see it where people just run in packs together a lot. Yeah. So I think with the Bandit change, I think you're going to keep seeing that be more and more of a theme.
Yeah,
so
that was my next kind of thought on it, was solo kind of channeling and pushing blindly. Yeah, like might have to take a little bit of a back seat just in terms of the knowledge of being shot so quickly. Like sometimes getting team shot with the Bandit feels almost like you've been sniped. Like it is that fast. Yeah. Like it literally, your sound, my sound sometimes almost registers like I've had one shot on me, but I know I've been team shot. So in terms of like the solo pushing and some of the individual skill that you sometimes can find, especially, you know, last year with the BR, how many times did we see Renegade just solo channeling their hell out of teams and just kind of going in and knowing if one person has got even a shot against them, he will push two. And sometimes I would say, honestly, 8 times out of 10 would win that fight and take 2 down with him. Do you think we're going to see less of that if we still have that much of a powerful kind of rifle?
Not really. I don't think you're going to see less of it. I think that you'll see less of like, I'm trying to think of the right way to explain it, but like I feel like you'll probably I think that you have to be a little more cautious of like, kind of like I said abroad, like you have to be a little more cautious of like, say, turning a corner and not knowing where someone is, because if there's 2 people, like maybe you're gonna die too quick. But like if you're in a 1v1 or you know they're pinned back somewhere, like individual skill expression with the Bandit is like super, super high. Yeah. To where like you'll still see people, like if they have the advantage, like you'll still see people pushing it, even if it's into 2 people. You have to play it really correctly. But I'd say, but like, it's the same thing that I would have said before. Like I felt the same way with the BR. Like like, you know, we're using John as an example here, because obviously he always wants to take a 1v1. He still can take those same 1v1s. And it's like the pushes that maybe you're saying he would have taken before because he's super confident. And like if he's in a 1v2 prior, the chances that, you know, hopefully he's going to trade, right?
Right.
And it's just, I feel like it's just the same thing now. It's like, well, if you're in a 1v2, like hopefully you're going to get a trade, you know, because that's, so it's different in some ways, but the same in others, if that makes any sense. Like
no, it does make
sense.
It does make sense. My fear would be that you wouldn't even get a trade.
Yeah. Well, but then, and that, 100%, that definitely could happen. But I think, again, I think that's more so of like how you play scenarios. Right. You know, let's say you're on live fire and you're at cuts and they're back elbow and you run into 2 people, like you're probably not getting a trade, you know, but it's like, it's just about, I think the big thing now is being aware of where people are on the map and how many people are there, and
giving
like,
it a second thought.
Yeah. And like just what you said about getting a trade is like, can I get the trade? Like if I go in, you know, if I push into a team, can I get the trade that I need to get? So, because you are right. If you die faster, you have to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. And then obviously the Bandit is one thing. There has also been equipment changes in terms of placements or even just total switches on certain maps. I definitely feel like play so differently. One being streets, no more rockets on streets. I feel like that has completely changed the speed at which that map is played and the aggression in which that map is played. And it's a little bit more, I think, thoughtful. I think having camo now in the middle. So what do you make of that change? Because I do think that is significant for teams to now have to adapt to.
Yeah, it's super significant because rockets, for the most part, would have been
should be a free
should be a free kill, hopefully too. Camo's great because like I like the camo change. It can be a little bit rough at times because you just don't necessarily know how stuff's going to play out. But yeah, it's like you said, I think you have to be a lot more thoughtful and you have to use good decision making. So again, like going into year 3 of the title, I think like just getting rockets out and making something different is really cool. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of hype plays this year. Yeah, with the camo.
I agree. Excuse the pups, everybody. By the way, that there are alert system for anybody at the front door. And I'm guessing we have a parcel potentially at the front door.
Find out.
So thank you to our alert system, sponsored by Dogs Ring. There we go. We also have other changes. Another one being Aquarius Overshield on Aquarius. Now, I was really surprised when I heard that for the first time. I mean, Brav, like, when you think of Aquarius, and I think arena style map, fairly small as well. We see super, super fast CTF games between teams who are very aggressive or know Aquarius CTF really well. How on earth is that going to play out, do you think, especially on LAN, with having the kind of buff of extra shields and being able to push forward potentially with flags as well?
Yeah, I think on paper, the Overshield on Aquarius is the biggest kind of make your eyes kind of go big change, right?
Yeah.
If you look at the whole list, Mark and I kind of said it on the day that we talked about it, but like you're scrolling the list, you're like, and you're like, oh, okay.
Damn.
The impetus of the change, I feel like, has to be right a desire from the HS team to simply have higher scoring games and clear advantages in a game that can drag on scoreless for quite some time, which personally I don't think is the worst thing. I think it's pretty big. Also, the placement allows a team, if they team shot it correctly, to do a lot of damage on it. I'd say I'm not for or against it, but I'd be curious from Peach of how it's playing so far. Yeah,
I think it plays pretty well. My thought on it overall is like I feel like it's pretty good for CTF because like, okay, if you get the Overshield and you hold down the map, then you're having a clear cut push into a base. Before you probably had to like time some nades a little bit better and this and that, where now you have an Overshield and you can just set up a really easy coordinated push because you got the Overshield. The only negative that I would say with it is I think that it's going to turn Slayer into a rougher game type on it. Like I really liked Aqua Slayer before and I thought it was just like kind of chess match overall, and it could be a stalemate, which I think in Slayers that's not necessarily a bad thing, even though obviously it's not always gonna be the most entertaining to watch. But I feel like now on Aqua TS, like if you're rolling a team and say you have a 5-kill lead, then you get the Overshield, that should be a now 10-kill lead. Then by the way, you're getting thrust and heat waves, and I just think that CTF, I think it makes a lot of sense and can probably do some good. But then I think unfortunately, alternatively, like in Slayers, it'll probably lead to a couple rougher games.
Yeah, I think it's true.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you there. I also think Aquarius has been some of our most, incredible Slayer games that we've had last season. I mean, looking at the finals and not even just finals, but
Worlds was
winners as well. Elimination bracket. There were everything that was amazing about the Slayers was always on Aquarius. And what you said about the stalemate is interesting because actually I found that stalemate to be really hype.
Oh yeah, I mean I love me. I love the Slayer stalemate. Yeah,
there'll still be some like it'll still happen. It naturally somehow, some way you'll find a 48 game. But now the difference is going to be is Overshield's coming up and you gotta. It's just gonna be a fight at the Overshield and that's gonna be it. So
might have to find yourself out rotating the Overshield. Just draining. I think I remember Optic doing that on live fire at one point, didn't they?
They just ran away.
They ran away from it.
Yeah, that was against us. And I think it was against us. So it was really fun. It was
you might have
funny
to,
but frustrating.
Take that tactic from them.
Are we talking year one?
I think it was like year one, and like we had an Overshield, and they just kept like
they went
cutting. They ran away.
It was live fire. I remember it.
And you're just like sitting there with the OB like, fight me. Like fight me.
You're like, please tell me. Yeah, honestly, you might have to take that at some point if you do find yourself like in the last kind of leg of a Slayer and they get OV. Just run, brother. Run for your life.
Aqua is tough though, because you're gonna run for your life and you're gonna just get trapped into
all of a sudden.
There's only so much. You're in a fridge.
You're on a fridge altogether. A live fire is a little bit easier to rotate out because you have tunnels and doors that you can get through.
I mean, literally called the rat tunnel.
Yeah, you can
get away. Yeah.
There's so many places you can finesse. I feel like Aqua, you can finesse on Aqua, but probably not to the same.
Not as much. Yeah, I think there's cuts at the top, but there's nothing really underneath to kind of get away from.
Yeah, there will be an element of it.
Yeah, 100%.
As long as like when you're going flag to gen to car, you have to have your like guns pointed on the doorways together, and then you can kind of brute force your way out.
Yeah.
But otherwise, you get caught out.
Yeah. No, it's a load of changes actually. I've got Halo Waypoint up here. And yeah, a lot of removal of things, a lot of removal of quantum as well. What do you think about not having quantum as much? I think there was a lot of people when quantum was announced and it came into competitive, people are excited to see some serious plays with it. Are you excited to see it being on some different maps?
It's removed on Solitude, but then now it's on Livefire.
Yeah.
And then I'm trying to think, I don't think it was removed on another map. So I think it's just been a kind of a swap, basically.
But what do you think about the removal of it or putting it into different ones? How are you feeling about quantum?
I like the quantum. It suits my playstyle a little bit. So like selfishly, I just think it's kind of fun to use. You can make some like good decision making with it. I'm like torn between it because like I think it works really well on Argyle, and like I've been surprised how much better I think it actually plays on like say the camo on Argyle.
Right. Yeah.
Livefire is going to be interesting because it's such a small-ish map, so it's like you can just make a lot of cuts and plays and a lot of damage, and you're cutting back. So it's a little bit interesting. And then Solitude, I'd say we never really saw it used. Like it was used effectively on Solitude, but like no one prioritized it. Yeah. Like going back to year 2. Like I said, people used it, but it just wasn't a priority. Like you wouldn't throw your life away top mid to go get it, you know? But the issue now with Solitude is obviously we have the camouflage replacing it, as well as the shock rifle now instead of the sniper. So yeah, I'm like, I don't have a particular feeling about the quantum. I'm excited to keep trying to get better and better with it, but yeah, we'll see.
You can say it with your chest because it's our podcast. What was the little laugh about with the shock rifle?
It's just the worst change I've ever seen. Like I'll say it. Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing about it because I'm laughing about it because I try to be somewhat. I don't know what the word would be. I was going to say unbiased, but like, you know, like okay. I was trying to... I was
just open to it, right?
Yeah, I try to be open to where I'm like, okay, like, you know, I'm going to get to the first event. And like I said earlier, I'm going to get to the first event and I'm going to see how it plays. And then I'm going to decide.
What about it in particular having that instead?
Shock rifle is just too strong overall. Maybe if in professional play we had like an ammo cut, like maybe that would be the alternative to what we probably need. But yeah, it's just the shock rifle is really strong. It's really fun to watch. Like, you know, when you see someone with it, it's incredibly fun. Obviously, people are so skilled, but the no scoping ability and aim assist on it is obviously a little bit stronger than the S7. So yeah, it's just when you throw camo into the mix on that too, yeah, it's going to make for some crazy plays. And like, again, like spectator wise, like it might just be really fun or whatever, but I thought the S7 was really fun to see and to use and to watch. So I just think the shock rifle is probably a little bit too drastic because I thought camo is already too big of a drastic change personally. I thought like Solitude is already such a snowball. Like you can even reference Fort Worth and Worlds as super examples. Like we got rolled by Optic and Solitude at Fort Worth, Solitude Strongholds, and then go to Worlds and we won. I think it was like 50 to 30 and crazy. 50 to 70 or something, or 250 to 30 and 250 to 70. And it's like, now you throw camo onto that. And I just think it's going to be, in some ways it could help a team, in other ways, you know, because maybe it'll help someone break out. Right, I don't know. Right. But if you have control and you have a 3 cap and then you get the camo, it's like, geez, I don't know. And to throw a shock on top of it, you know, it's, I don't know.
Now, there's a lot more change that has been kind of implemented, but one of the biggest things is obviously a new map, Forbidden. Exciting for us because we get to kind of come up with what we think is the meta, what we can see being played by players and teams. So before I get to you and how you are feeling on it, Brav, how excited are you to have a new map, to be able to geek out to and to watch all of our pro players find their footings and find how it plays well and what really is going to be the kind of tactics and the style of that map. How excited are you about that as a caster?
Yeah, I think having a new map in the mix is great. Kind of like building on what PJ said earlier of just year 3 feeling fresh. I think it fits right in there. I think I'm most excited as long as it plays exciting and plays well. You know what I mean? I think that's I don't have enough time on it right now. I think over the next few weeks online, we'll have a much better idea of exactly how it's going to play. I mean, it's interesting because I like the style of the map. I think you know, when you think of kind of a Sanctuary-esque map, the vibe is really good. But when you look at like the overhead, right, it's quite a complex map of sight lines and routes and it is not a straightforward arena map. It's certainly, you know, a symmetrical CTF map without a doubt, but it's not a straightforward arena map. So I think jury out on exactly how it will play at LAN. So that's kind of where I sit. Very excited about its potential and hoping that it plays well and straightforward in the way that people expect. But what have your kind of thoughts been so far?
Yeah, honestly, I feel the same. I think it's good. I think anytime you have a 2 sniper CTF map, it's probably going to be pretty fun. Mm-hmm. I've only played it a handful of times because we just started practicing it recently and, had these tournaments. I think it plays pretty well. Like, it's pretty fun. I'm curious to see like where it's going to develop to and how it continues to progress. Selfishly, it's just another map added in for us. So it's like, okay, we have another CTF to now play. Mm-hmm. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, but like I almost would have wished maybe something got taken out and then put something new in. Mm-hmm. But no, overall the map I think overall plays pretty well and feels pretty fun. So I'm excited to keep developing on it. Right now we're not the best at it. We just got to keep getting our footing for it. But like I said, I think I'm always a fan of a 2 sniper CTF. So I think it'd be really fun for the fans.
Certainly, some interesting flag runs.
I was going to say the one thing that the crazy mix of elevation and sightlines does offer is some wild sniping angles, some inventive flag route angles, approaches, etc., tosses when you're talking about, because the toss distance from, say, top midish and bridgish to like that court and that flag is quite large. So I think in that regard, the fact that those aren't 100% straightforward should provide some really interesting stuff where the top teams that have put the time in should have some stuff. When we get to, for example, when we get to the first event of the year, there are teams that are undoubtedly going to have some things figured out that other teams don't. And that'll probably balance out a little bit as the year goes. Yeah. But I am excited about the potential that all of that offers because it's kind of an interesting maze of elevation and sidelines. Yeah,
it is. I think you're right. There is a lot of things that I think could easily come from that. Being creative, I think, for a lot of our teams. We actually saw a creative one in one of the qualifiers. Monsters flag run was very interesting. I can't even remember exactly. I remember the end of it. I don't remember the start.
Yeah, he pulled it courtyard and there's like I can't even explain. I don't even call for it. It's just there's a pillar in the middle of the courtyard.
Of the court, extra ramp.
And he jumped it up to like the snipe street, like the enemy team snipe street, because his teammates were coming up top mid. I literally watched it. I was like, wow, I didn't even know. I'm not even joking. I literally saw him, like, I'm watching it back and watch this flag route. So I didn't even know there was a pillar there. Yeah, I didn't know you could jump. I didn't know there was something you could jump. I was like, oh, all right.
I really love this part of the process of watching players learning things from each other as well. I think it's really interesting to kind of see their heads kind of turning in the clock and, the clockwork kind of churning in their brains to figure things out and think about how they would do something in their situations. I love that part. That's why I love sometimes new things and especially a new map, because we're all learning together and it's fun to watch you guys kind of figure it out. So I love all of that.
It's cool with I always like changes. Obviously I want them to make sense, but I always like changes because I just like learning new stuff and trying to develop and I don't even know what year I'm on playing. I mean, Jesus, for professional play, probably like 15 or 16 at this point, but like I still geek out where like I watch, obviously I'm a big objective player. Yeah. I saw on Forbidden, since we're talking about it, I saw like Lucid pull flag towards, we call it main ramp. I don't know what everyone else call it. The ramp, the ramp to top mid. And instead of like going to the ramp, on the ramp, there's like a little ledge and he jumped on the outside of the ledge up to the ramp. And I was like, oh wow, that's really smart. Like, oh, that's smart. Like, wait, I got to do that. I didn't know you could do that. So it's cool. It's really cool. Not even just pro players or pro players. Like I watch Halo streams obviously 24/7, and it's cool when a new map is on because I can just toss on a lot of high level players. Doesn't have to be top of the top professional players and learn something new. So it's fun. It's fun.
It is fun. There's also the element of the fact that quite a few sections of Forbidden doesn't have floor and that you can fall off, and we've seen John quite a few times. The flag goes through. Yeah. Gotta figure that out. John quite a few times.
On Forbidden?
Not on Forbidden.
That was Argyle.
It was, but I'm just saying, any map without a floor, after watching John fall off the map nearly 3 times, 2 times confirmed, nearly 3. Yeah.
Did we have any instances of that on main stage last year?
No, I don't believe so. But watching it from his POV, like it was on him, watching him fall off the map twice. And still win. You guys still won the map.
Yeah, we won that map. Yeah, we did.
Was hilarious.
It's a good batting donut.
I thought to myself, is he okay?
We're in the off season.
Is John drunk? Is he okay?
Listen, we're just getting back into it.
He actually fell off the map.
No, he fell off the map twice. No, fell off.
The first one,
it was hilarious.
The first one was he grappled too far and then he tried grappling back, so you just see him like
The second one,
you shoot it and it just doesn't connect anything. And the second one, he just literally.
Second one was there was no excuse. He just got out of a gunfight, jumped backwards, was on a ledge, and I'm not joking. I was watching on my setup, and I thought out loud, said it out loud. Oh, John, watch that ledge, mate. We already saw you fall off. Gone.
Yeah. It's like Peter said, off season.
It was the first turning back.
Getting your footing.
John.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
John's got vertigo, mate, on that. Damn, yeah. So interesting to see, and you have to make sure that John knows all the angles, all the jumps, so that he ain't falling off that map.
He's got him. He's just
unforbidden. All right, because can't be having that. Yeah. We need John. We need John spawned in.
Feet stay on the ground.
Feet on the ground. Boots on the ground. Ain't
what
no
was the Patrick
jetpacks
Star
to
line
save
for the
you.
Super Bowl? You must maintain a firm grip on
You
it.
must maintain a firm grip.
Yeah, firmly grasp.
Firmly grasp. Which, absolutely amazing. Yeah, really excited about some of these changes and to see how they're implemented by all of our incredible teams. Speaking of incredible teams, we will go over, I think, which has been the most talked about change so far of the rosters, and then we can dive in probably next week on some of the other kind of changes, which are honestly still happening, literally to this day. So changes are still being made constantly, but the biggest one, of course, has to be the APG drop and the Penguin now dead zone pickup from Optic, with also then the Ricochet with the SSG picking up Legend, and that kind of like trio of movement going around. That was definitely the big one. And I think, I don't know, Rob, how you felt, but post-Worlds, I had a funny feeling there were going to be some big changes being made, although both Optic and SSG were incredible teams. And I think on different days or maybe another week, it could have been different for them. I've always thought that through the whole season, that any one of those three teams, our big three, Optic, FaZe, SSG, can do it on different days given different situations. They're incredible teams. Did you kind of see a big change coming? Were you aware of how big that change might be, and maybe SSG taking a risk as to pick up? I think what we're seeing is, especially in Infinite, the first European big pickup for them.
Yeah, I think to answer both questions, knew a change was coming. I think just because spending enough time around the best Halo players in the world, when you have a team like FaZe winning the way that they did, right? Any team that's serious is going to say, okay, what do we need to do to take them down next year? How do we make sure things are different? So I think definitely saw that coming, but certainly didn't see the SSG switch up coming. I think both changes are great for each team. I think the Penguin one was kind of heavily rumored right away, and it's not surprising. And you think of how Penguin has been kind of this really has been this kind of like really consistent, steady growth, both as a player, I think also as a person when you hear his interviews and when you get to talk to Zane. So I think like his evolution just makes sense, and the pickup makes sense. And also excited to see what SSG is able to do. I think if you looked at kind of the options that they had, of course, they had a pretty wide swath of players they could have chosen from. So I think that one was a bit of a kind of a much welcome surprise. Yeah,
it's interesting. There was a lot of rumors kind of going around about who dropped who first, who was trying to pick up who, what team was left with what choice. There was so much kind of circulating around it, so it's always so difficult to know, and I don't think you're ever going to know unless you are said players or said orgs. But there were a lot of good guesses, which I'd love to hear some in the comments as well. So let me know what you think about that rotation of kind of pickups and what came first, the chicken or the egg, essentially. But Legend,
the penguin or the egg.
Yeah, penguin or the egg, and they lay eggs. That's a really good reference. Wow, see, he's really good at his job. It was interesting. I was not surprised with Legend. I say I wasn't surprised. I was thrilled for Legend, I should say, more so, because he is a phenomenal player. I personally think he's a Halo prodigy for his age, and how good he is at this level. And I think how good he is for, and this is no kind of, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Europe by any means, but I think how good he is considering that is self-growth on his own, to be perfectly honest. I think that talent, he hasn't been surrounded by the best NA players in the world. He hasn't been on some of the most legendary teams and has had experience in that sense. He is amazing, based on his own personal growth as a player. And I think there's something to that for sure. So seeing him now on SSG, how much do you think that is going to develop him going into maybe the rest of his career and future in Halo?
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to help him a lot. It's so, like, something like that's really tough because he's obviously already such a top player. You know, I thought that Quadrant team last year was just so incredible. And honestly, Legend gets a lot of the focus, but I thought everyone on that team was obviously incredible. But yeah, like you said, like, I don't know what the wording you said was, but like kind of like I'm really excited for him to see him get an opportunity now. You know, deservingly so. He gets an opportunity in NA. Yeah, so it'll be interesting because he's going to improve, but it's like he's already so good. So it's like I think that maybe his outlook being around Eco and Stella, it's kind of like it's almost like when you look at Bound, like year one, like he has such a raw, skilled player, but you can see such just I'd say like maturity to gameplay improvement,
100%.
like teaming with Eco and Stellar and obviously Penguin. I imagine Legend's going to have somewhere the same. I think that now that he's been competing for 2 years already, like he probably has less to grow on, but still like to grow as a team and to be around great players. Obviously, you know, I think so highly of Bound, Stellar, and Eco, you know, on that team. So yeah, he's definitely gonna improve, and I'm sure his outlook will probably shift. You know, now that he's on a top 3 team, and you know, just a solidified roster in that group.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe it's kind of cool to think maybe exactly like you say, Peach, maybe mentally he can be like, okay, I'm no longer proving myself. Here I am backed by NA org, here to stay.
Because that's more so what I mean is like, I think that what would progress is probably just his maturity and mentality, because his skill is obviously already there. Maybe there's a few gameplay things that they could grow on together. But yeah, like just, I think there's probably a big difference in the mentality of being an underdog coming into a different country and, you know, trying to compete. And like Quadrant, even though they were so good, they were always a story of like, oh, couldn't they upset this team? Where now, you know, he's a part of a group that is expected to win championships. So
let me also elaborate on what you said and clarify what I said, just to make sure it's fully understood. Because sometimes, you know, you need to clarify. When I say this is no disrespect to Europe, and I feel like he has become a player in his own way, on his own kind of terms, and now he's in NA. That's no disrespect to Quadrant. I recognize absolutely how good Quadrant are.
We all know that.
But what I would say about Quadrant is Quadrant have no experience on winning championships in a global land scale. They don't have a world championship. They don't have multiple event wins. Like, that's just something that they haven't got the experience on yet. With Legend joining SSG, he is surrounded by players who have that experience. And the second you said Eco and Stella, for me, it was like, yep, that is exactly what I'm talking about. Being able to play with Eco and Stella and not be molded, but just kind of guided and have your skill and what you can do and your ability on a map kind of guided by those two. That to me is just like gold. Like, that is everything that I would want as a young player. I'd be like, this is my best opportunity to show the player I am and the player I'm going to become this year. That's kind of where I'm at with it, if that makes sense.
I mean, you're very sweet for clarifying, but I think we all know how good Quadrant was. So
I know. I just wanted to make sure that's what I meant. I didn't mean like, oh, leave them in the dust. They suck.
No, not at all. No, I don't think anyone took it that way. Like I said, good to clarify, but I don't think anyone took it that way.
Yeah, I just think I think it's not again
they
like you made it to America.
They picked him up because of his talent.
Yes,
like Quadrant.
100%.
Like, you know, like he was 18 years old. He hadn't competed in an event, but he was very similar to Bound in the way that he just like jumped onto the scene, you know? So even what you're saying, like he did quite literally with his own talent make it onto a professional roster before even making it to a LAN event. So
correct.
You know,
exactly.
It's not even with what you said, it's not like you're wrong at all.
I also wouldn't be surprised at all if Quadrant ever just completely split up into all fours and just into different teams
all go
in
NA.
NA. I mean, they're all incredible. Every single player on that roster is amazing. They have the gunny, they have the skill, they have the kind of the mindset behind it. You hear them on a main stage, you know, when they're making history. That mentality of like, yeah, we're not done yet. We're so happy and we're thrilled, and you can see how passionate they are. But the fact that they're like, yeah, but we have work to do. Like, I know we just made history, but we have tomorrow, and we're continuing to push forward. That's something that, you know, you need to have the grit to be able to push forward. And I think that they would do so well individually on a North American team for sure. Whether that's in the form of like Native, for example, or Carl or whatever, you know, I do think that split up, they would also be so impactful as individual players. What do you think, bruv?
Oh, totally. I mean, if you told me, hey, on my bingo card this, like for the next 2 years, I have the quadrant players being all on NA teams, I'd say you're not crazy. Yeah. I think, I think they proved that they all have not just the skill, but also the kind of experience now to be comfortable on main stages, to know exactly what needs to be done in games, and not just that, right? If you look at the way that they were, for example, the archetype example is, of course, the Strongholds example, but the way that they were blowing out some of the best teams in the world. Like, these guys are very, very good at this game, and anyone who's sleeping on them is not watching the same games that we are. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more with that. Moving on from Legend, being on SSG now. Obviously, Dead Zone being taken away from that roster, going on to Optic, and you kind of touched upon that as well, Brav, of kind of progressing as a person as well, and his growth as a player and a person. Going on to Optic comes also its struggles, something that we've definitely seen in the qualifiers, the first two. It got me feeling a little bit like nervous for him. You know, online is always going to be difficult. I think also working through your first kind of small humps and bumps as a roster with a new person on it, and also especially a player who you've been playing against and literally, you know, throwing up the kind of heads or tails coin of winning championships against, always comes with its challenges. He's now on your side, and there's some kind of evolving having to be made there as a team. Those bumps were met with some serious criticism from those online qualifiers. What Optic fans were saying about their own team and their new player were difficult to read, very difficult to read. Challenges like that, I think, for Dead Zone to have to overcome the excitement of joining Optic and such a prolific org, being met with such difficult words by your new fans now. How is that mentally? You know, how are you supposed to kind of keep pushing forward? Do you feel like Dead Zone is the type of player to be able to get over something like that? How is he going to handle it? You've played against him for years.
Yeah, he'll be fine. I mean, all the top players no one's going to say something that we haven't already heard
or
read.
Many times over.
It is rough, but at the end of the day, you just close it out, do your best to not see it. I'm sure he knows that. I doubt he goes looking for it. It's a couple online tournaments. Everyone knows it's irrelevant. But to be honest, like we've talked about this before, Brav obviously knows this, like you can be winning and people are still going to say the dumbest things in the world about you. So I don't think it's something he's going to struggle with. Obviously it is difficult because it's difficult because even with Optic, they're so gigantic that like it'll feed into Twitter as well, which is a little bit harder to stay away from. But no, he's not. I don't think he's going to struggle with it. Obviously, it sucks to read, but it's just Twitch chat. I get stuff said about me all the time.
I know.
It's just.
I just feel like with our podcast, I think a lot of people will listen and kind of see sense in what we're saying, and I think really me bringing this up, the main message I want to get across is give people a chance. I mean, it's the first two tournaments online that they've had together. It's going to take time for that puzzle piece to fit in perfectly. It might be a little bit wobbly now, but you need a little bit of time to work through kinks as a team and to figure out exactly how you now want to play with a different dynamic there. And I just think that if you are a true fan of your org, you need to be rooting for your org rather than against somebody that you've just picked up. Let's encourage the kind of, I don't know, the winning attitude that you want out of your team. You need to also have that winning attitude.
Yeah, if you're a fan of a team, just going off what Lot said, if you're a fan of a team and you actually truly want them to win, you should support your team any way you can, be as kind as you can and encouraging as you can, because at the end of the day, that will help. Like if a player is going to see a message and you have an option between the two and which one is going to help, like positivity is always going to help much more than negativity. Yeah. So like if you're a fan and you want your team to win championships, like just stop being negative all the time. Obviously, like there's a part of it where like, look, I'm a sports fan. I say stuff about the New York Giants all the time, but I'm not tweeting Daniel Jones or, I'm not tweeting the players, like telling them how to play their game, but it's a it's a whole different topic because of esports and the connection and how close fans are to players and stuff. But yeah, definitely what Latte said, make sure you're positive and try to be encouraging.
Yeah, I think it's very important to do that, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we're only human. So there's only so much humans can sometimes take, and just give it a chance. It's been a couple of weeks, guys. Come on. The other thing is,
You're saying there's no aliens?
No, actually, there are aliens.
I'm just joking.
Especially in Optic. You guys have a mascot that was an alien. So
true.
Come on. Alan. Speaking of comparison though, and getting back to the kind of grittiness of a team change and what, you do make comparisons as old and new. I do feel like the APG swap with Dead Zone is very kind of, I would say, like, interesting to me, just because of how different the swap for SSG was in terms of the actual, I think, the makeup of a team.
Yeah.
Dead Zone to me and APG are very, very similar. I'm sure they do bring different things and characteristics of their gameplay and their style. But bruv, in terms of the comparison of the two, they are similar. So what would you say their differences are? What do you think that Optic can now take from Dead Zone to push their game a little bit further and extend that?
I think, first of all, I agree. If you look at kind of like amazingly well-rounded, mentally strong veteran players like APG and Dead Zone are right in that bucket together. So I think the one thing that Optic fans may be thinking is like, okay, this is a pretty, on a good note, this is a pretty even trade that we are at the very least going to have the kind of the same exact skill set that we had. I have to guess, and I'd be curious what PJ's thoughts are. I have to guess that with the speed of Halo Infinite, that they're hoping that maybe they find a bit more pace in terms of how do they, for example, maybe you have a scenario where you have to wait for each other and you're pushing on a disadvantage when you don't have control. When I look at Penguin, he's a player that can play the game, very, very fast. And of course, APG could as well. But I have to feel like if you look at Optic avoiding playing from the back foot, that they're hoping that they might get some great speed, some great coordination, etc., out of Zane. But I'm curious what kind of on paper, you have so many hours against him, Peach, what you think that he in his best, what Optic's thoughts might be of what he could bring to the roster.
Yeah, I think I definitely think like speed wise, maybe a little bit to what you had said. Like he's probably faster than APG, but honestly, the way that I look at Optic, I just think they're so coordinated. Where like I wouldn't have said. Like, I just think, like, maybe it's a benefit that they needed more speed, but, like, at the end of the day, I think that they would have done that with APG as well.
I agree,
the same way. But maybe Zane, maybe it'll come a little more naturally to him if that's what they feel like they need. It's tough to say. They've kind of talked about it a little bit on the change, and at the end of the day, APG's talked about it, Formal's talked about it, and they just said they felt like it was just something that like they just needed something different, after, APG said after Worlds, like it just felt like they were worried that they just wouldn't be able to like maybe have the bounce back that they did before. But yeah, I think they're both incredible players. The benefit of them picking up Zane is I know Trippy and him and I think Tommy have all played together for a little bit.
H5,
definitely.
Right?
Yeah, like H5 I know they play together. So, it's not like they're picking up someone super unfamiliar. And like we said, like playstyle wise, obviously they're very similar playstyles, which will actually help them because like, at least from my experience with picking up John, like John is a very different player to when we teamed with TJ.
Yeah.
To where we had to like shift so many different things.
Point,
and so it's like, like maybe if they were looking for a change, picking someone up who's in a similar play style that they know and they're going to naturally be comfortable with could, just benefit them in the almost like a quick process,
I feel that. It's interesting you talk about the shift and the change that you guys made, because I'm actually seeing that exact almost same shift for SSG. And this might be just me thinking or just trying to pull something out of thin air, right? And just the way that I think. Yeah, please do let me know. I've got to say, I feel like their team dynamic now with Legend is very eerily similar to yours currently. If you think about it, they've taken out Dead Zone and put Legend. Legend is a main slayer, super fast player. I would go as far as say aggressive as well, which reminds me of the change that you made from TJ to John. I would now say like, when I compare players, to me, you're more of like an Eco or a Stella, maybe even a combination of the two. Yeah. And then you look at kind of the similarities between players or even just play styles more so and aggressiveness from all of the other teammates on their team and your team. they're very similar in terms of that pacing. Yeah. So actually you might find yourself in almost like a mirror situation going up against them. In your experience going against teams that are similar or play well or similar to you guys, how does that often play out for you? Do you match up well against teams that are similar to yours, or would you prefer a team that's totally different in terms of their makeup and how they kind of work?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough one. I have to really think about it. I don't know if I can answer that 100%.
That's fine.
Now, I definitely I agree for the most part, because I think that Legend, obviously, his individual talent, everyone knows how good he is, and obviously what he's been kind of showcasing in the past year. It's interesting with them because, like, I feel like to what you said, they have a similar makeup to us now, and they do. But it's interesting because, like, I think like Legend and Dead Zone are really similar in terms of the pace that they play at. I just would have said that Legend is more of a main slayer, where Zane is definitely like more like me and probably more of an objective player. I think the roles are overrated anyway, but that's a whole different point.
I agree.
But I think, again, same thing for SSG and picking up Legend is that, like, I don't think they're gonna have to change up their play style too much, which again is gonna definitely benefit them in terms of the process of getting used to a new teammate. So that'll really help them. Matchup wise, I don't know. I'll have to see.
Yeah, maybe it's just me not.
I like when people play. How do I word this correctly? Like, I've always liked competing. And like I've always enjoyed series more when people play more similar to us. Mm-hmm. So like, I guess I wouldn't say it's like easier by any means, but like it's just probably more fun. I guess it would be the easiest way. Like I thought SSG, like I thought last year, I thought us and SSG played quite similar.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like when we played each other, obviously they're so good. So it's like, it's just a battle literally a battle every time. But I'd say those series are probably more fun to be a part of, because I don't know, it's just maybe it's a comfortability thing, I guess, because they're doing stuff that I would do and that we would do, I don't know.
No, I feel you. I think honestly my thought process behind that is purely because, and this may be just reading Legend wrong as a player, and I don't know, but I just feel like he is the type of player who would be hungry to get kills, similar to what I would say Renegade is. He's definitely not as fast paced as Renegade for sure, or I would even say as aggressive as Renegade, but I would say he is somebody who gets his kills, and he has a significant KD on his team, or did on Quadrant, and was definitely a leader in that regard and sense. So I think that's where I'm kind of putting the two together. And maybe that doesn't happen as much on SSG for him. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he does take a little bit of a different kind of like, and I say role lightly, but kind of a different, I don't know, play style for them, or have to fit in slightly differently to have success with that team. But I don't know, that's kind of my thought process behind it, that it seems like a similar type of kind of comparison.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely a similar comparison in the sense of like, just I think off of raw individual talent, like people put Legend and John in that same kind of category for sure. So it's definitely similar. 100%.
I'm excited for the guy.
Yeah,
I can't lie. I'm really excited for him. I think this is huge. Like I was for Barcode when, he came over, how exciting that is. And I think as a young kid with this opportunity and chance, I think it's amazing. So I'm really excited to see him kind of fill that role in those shoes heading onto that team. And I really do wish him an incredible season in his first debut with an NA team, which is going to be amazing, which I guess is going to have to bring us to the end, because we already given you an extended episode this time. And I think it was owed an extended episode for sure.
Sorry we took such a long break.
We need a little bit of off time for the season, you know what I'm saying? So, but Brav, as our first guest, we're going to give you the first rating of your coffee, which we do at the end of every podcast.
Oh, sweet.
So you get to rate it out of 10.
Out of 10.
Yeah, and we always give, kind of like a little breakdown of why we rate it, what we rated it, how did we enjoy it, that type of thing. So kick us off, Brav, with your black eye from GNM. Yeah.
Okay. Just as a reminder, a black coffee with 2 shots of espresso in it. I'm gonna rate it pretty high. This is the second time I've ordered a black eye from GNM. Espresso's great, and also the roast of beans, having like a coconut macadamia flavor in the roast. You can't beat it. Honestly, it's a solid 9 out of 10 for me. I'd be hesitant to hand out a 10 at any time.
I know. So we are too.
Yeah. So it's going to be a solid 9. And I would drink this any day of the week for sure.
Love that. A solid 9 out from somebody who is very well versed in his coffee, espresso, and all of the above when it comes to coffee shops. So that's a huge rating from Mr. Bravski's, Dudynsky's. Peach, what about you? I'm not going to go, so you can absolutely give this.
You don't
want to rate it, do you?
No, because we've done it before.
Go on, just rate it. Rate this particular cup then.
Yeah, how was this one made this morning?
Listen, it was my idea to go
I was about to say,
get this
hold
coffee,
on,
so it was a 10.
Not rate it after
10.
you were the one that
I
wanted
got
to.
some Nutella toast with it. Ooh,
I gotta say,
strawberries.
It looked amazing.
He did.
It was a 10. Yeah. It was a 10.
Was that fire?
Second
Strawberries,
time
bananas, Nutella, toast.
Yeah. It's a small little piece. Don't worry.
one
I'm not
piece.
bulking
It
over
wasn't
here.
gluttonous.
It was
Yeah.
fine.
I'm not bulking.
It was
small little piece.
reasonable.
It was.
Respectable. Yeah.
Which I actually liked. Like the
Yeah,
first
you know,
time I
you-
ordered it, I was like, because it sounds
Right.
like it's gonna be
Hefty.
Like I might die.
Right. You can't, especially when you're talking about a Nutella toast, you can't go huge because it looks great, it sounds great.
Yeah.
Guess what? By 3 p.m., you're asleep
done.
and there's no, you don't get anything done that day.
Hey, what's wrong with being asleep at 3 p.m.?
Actually, yesterday, Lottie was asleep at 3 p.m., so maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
Let's said to me the other day, I've really gotten used to an afternoon nap at this point.
I know, I really have, honestly. But the first day Brav was here, we crushed a veggie tray, didn't we?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Annihilated a
Nuked it.
giant veggie tray.
We had a busy few days here with Brav. So
We really
to be fair,
did. Yeah.
a nap was
Yeah.
It was
deserved.
warranted. It was. I mean,
deserved.
to have a birthday. Happy late birthday, by the way.
Thank
Lot.
you.
To have a birthday lunch on the same day as a Super Bowl was ambitious, and I don't think any of us realized just how ambitious until we got home from the birthday lunch, and people were coming over in like 10 minutes
Yes.
for the Super Bowl,
Yes.
and it was no one was ready for
I
that.
remember like looking at the phone and I said, I said, bloody hell, what time is it? Well, I already knew the time because I'd seen the phone. Anyway,
What did you actually say, Lot?
that is what I said, Mike.
Okay.
But it's just, why do we do things backwards in Britain? We do. Like I've
You
looked at
definitely
the
do.
time
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
gone, bloody hell, what time is it?
Yeah.
Knowing full well what the time is.
It's true.
But it's more of like I'm
an
exclaiming
exclamation. Yeah,
that,
yeah.
God, look at the time. Anyway, we literally had 10 minutes and I was like, shit, I was expecting to have a whole ass nap.
You were. You didn't get your nap.
No.
Not that day,
not
but the
at
next
all.
day you made up
Next
for it.
day.
Super Bowl went to overtime too. It turned out to be
What
a
a
great
game.
game.
Great game.
It turned out to be a great game, but it's funny because we're obviously tired leading into it, and then it was like one of the
5-hour
longest
game.
games.
That was my
Also the
first
longest
game
ball
I've ever
game.
paid attention to.
You paid attention. Now.
Not really.
No,
Not really.
You've been
Not
faking,
like
you've
that.
been faking it this whole time.
No, because we barely ever watched them. Well, me.
Super Bowls?
Me. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say you watch like Giants games with me though.
Yeah. But like, I would say like half-assed.
Yeah.
Now we know. Now we know.
I'm
Okay,
just
we
being
didn't know.
honest.
That's
Sure,
all right.
we
We
I'm just being
appreciate it.
honest.
That's
I'm just
fair.
being honest.
We
But
appreciate
that
it, but now we
game,
know.
I honestly, I feel sucked in.
Yeah.
Like I am sucked into it now. That was fantastic. It's the first time I felt like I've actually known what's happening
Yeah.
as well, because I was almost forced to know what was happening because of how complicated things were getting. Like to enjoy the game, you have to know the game. I've fully understood
to back
that
you
now.
up here, and this isn't a football podcast, so we can finish off of this now, but the 49ers didn't even know the overtime rules. So you're saying you were
Or did that
clueless.
come out afterwards?
They didn't even know.
Well, we were
they
expecting
didn't
a whole
They didn't
other
even fully
quarter.
understand because it was because
Yeah,
of the quarter.
first-
yeah,
yeah,
they didn't
yeah.
even understand it. So it's funny because you're saying I didn't even understand. I'm like, well, shit.
I did. I did
some on the
understand
team.
it.
No, but I'm saying you didn't at the start.
No, I didn't at the start.
At the end,
But I learned.
some people
football.
on
Did
the
that come
team.
out like in a post game thing?
Yeah, there's so many posts about it and this and that, but yeah, someone had said like they didn't. Yeah, they just didn't know.
Yeah.
Shouldn't you really be in the locker room before, and like even days before, understanding the potential outcomes of what could happen? So like, for example, is that not a conversation? Like, here is a potential outcome. Like, there could be an overtime. This is what happened.
You'd be surprised. A lot of people learned about the Slayer overtime rules at like the fourth event, you know? So like, yeah.
I still don't fully know the rules.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm
It's like,
I'm
there's
just
your
looking at the
answer,
ref
yeah.
going like,
Yeah.
what are we
Yeah.
doing?
Me, if the game clock's still going, I'm like, okay, the game's still going on, and yeah, here we
We very much rely on you, especially in those grand finals where you go, they got in the last millisecond, so it is an overtime, and here's
right.
extra time on the clock, and it's now
We just have to hope that I know what I'm talking about.
No,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you do.
Well, so,
No
Phenomenal.
pressure,
so far, but hey,
Phenomenal
you never know.
caster.
Just
You
around
are
the corner
phenomenal caster.
from having absolutely no idea what's going on. We'll see.
Not at all. I will rate mine. I'm going to give mine a solid 9.2.
9.2.
It was a phenomenal coffee, 9.2. Loved it. Not as espresso heavy as usual for me, but it was really good. Okay. It was really good. And I think I now need to start converting my order into a cappuccino. Less milk.
Oh, yeah. You want a little higher ratio.
Yes. I think I need a higher ratio.
Maybe an extra shot as well.
Definitely.
Sorry, don't let me do that to
Something
you. I
extra.
shouldn't be bringing that to the show.
Something extra. But honestly, this episode has been an absolute pleasure. We are so happy to be back, bringing you guys regular content. We had a really nice break and a much needed break, and we're ready to come back bringing you all of our thoughts and feelings on everything happening in the season, all changes being made and results as they come in, flying in through the double doors. So really excited about that. Hope you guys are too. And anything that we discussed today, please put in the comments below. We love reading everything you have to say. Let's keep it clean.
As long as it's nice. I'll say this so you guys don't have to. Yeah, come on.
Yeah.
Yeah, like we talked about today.
Yeah.
Chill out. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, just chill out. That's the title. Chill out, guys. Let's just chill out. But Brav, thank you so much. Thrilled to have you on. It has been amazing to hear your perspective, your backstory, just having a chat. We could have honestly gone on probably for another 2 hours just chatting to you. So thank you so much for coming on. We love you so much. And I just want to put it on record that you are a phenomenal caster. So it is a pleasure to work alongside you and to know you and be your friend. So thanks for all of the above.
No way too kind. Yeah, thanks so much for having me on. And also, not only is Latte the best host in the game, but I'd say Latte and Peach also the best hosts for a stay. I've got to stay with you guys for a few days. So it's been so great. I love hanging with you. It's so cool to come on the show. Long-time listener, first-time guest. It's just been so much fun, and can't wait for another year with you guys, bouncing around the globe.
Us too. It's going to be absolutely amazing. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. As always, hope you have an amazing rest of your week. Cannot wait to see you in the next one. And as always, stay on the grind.